Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Music Den. I'm your host, Armando Venditti. Hoping you guys are having a good night and above all else that you are looking after yourselves and one another. Ladies and gentlemen, before I get into this very special episode that we're going to talk about, I want to welcome back to the channel Mr. Jim Bricker. How's it going, Jim?
Doing very well, Armando. Good evening to you.
Glad that you're back and for this very special episode. And Mr. Ken Cheshire, how's it going, Ken?
Going well. Glad to be here.
Glad that you're back again for this very special episode. Now, ladies and gentlemen,
You keep saying very special episode, and it reminds me of these after school specials that were
that's
on.
exactly what it is.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, we fired this son of a bitch up to do this very special episode called What is a Masterpiece? The Coda edition. Now, what we're going to do for this episode is each of us are going to, in our own very eloquent way, describe, in our own opinion, what goes into making a masterpiece. Okay. Now, for different people, it could be different variables, right? I've said this before in the previous 5 episodes. So I'm going to pass the virtual mic around to my two co-hosts and cohorts, and we are going to each come up with our own opinion as to what makes a masterpiece. In this case, for a recorded piece of music, could be a single track, could be an album, could be an entire symphony. All right, there are no limits. No, nothing is off the table. So without further ado, I will pass the virtual mic to, let me see here. Let's let's fuck this up a little bit. We are going to go with Mr. Jim Bricker.
Oh, great. All right. Picture, if you will,
Oh Lord, but the pictures go on.
a circle. And in the circle, there are five wedges. They all kind of come to the middle, and it's like a ill-shaped slices of pizza. In fact, it's so ill-shaped that some of these five pieces may be completely oversized, taking up like more than half of the circle. Some may be incredibly skinny, and this may vary from piece to piece to piece. When and basically what I'm the point I'm trying to get to is that for me, I've got like five criteria that probably define for me what a musical masterpiece of an album would be. And the weight that each of these pieces have is not only unequal, but it's fungible depending upon what you're looking at. And that to me just kind of speaks to the whole subjectiveness of what we're looking at. So I'll try to give examples as we go.
Okay.
So you had to have me go first. Okay. So for me, the first wedge of this would be the impact. What impact did this album have? Things like Sergeant Pepper had a major cultural impact. Things like Prince's Purple Rain had a major impact on the sound of music for the entire remainder of the decade. One could also argue that Peter Gabriel 3 had a massive impact on the sound of music for the majority of that decade. Um,
Go on.
Velvet Underground, the Velvet Underground and Nico album, a lot of people can say had a monstrous impact, even though from a sales standpoint, it was just a pittance. It sold like garbage. Um, so impact is one factor. Quality would be the second factor for me. And this is where, you know, things get even more subjective because, you know, for some, Madonna's debut album could be the absolute apex of quality, depending upon that individual. Others would say, no, 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 you're mad. The Smiths, The Queen is Dead is the absolute apex of quality, and others would say, no, you're nuts. It's the Ramones, or it's the Sex Pistols, or it's, you know, Joy Division's Closer, things like that. It's very, very hard to distinguish, quality, but it's one of those things where you know it when you hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that can be production, musicianship, the the beauty, the melodic beauty of the song, or the harmonies and performing it. All those kinds of things go in there. Okay, that's number two. Uniqueness. What is it about this piece of music or this album that sets it apart from other things? Um, I mentioned Peter Gabriel's Melt as, one thing that was incredibly unique for its time.
Mm-hmm.
Talk Talk's The Spirit of Eden is another one that there wasn't nothing that sounded like that
I would
at
agree.
that time. Um, Things like REM's Murmur. Again, nothing sounded like that in 1983. It is an incredibly unique album, and because of its uniqueness, it made an impact. Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. Again, what else sounded like that in 1966? Not a damn thing. It was just so far above and beyond everything else. It kind of set its own standard. Um, Sales. So sales is sort of another way of sort of measuring the cultural impact, which
Mm-hmm.
is different than like it's a quantitative impact versus a qualitative impact.
Okay. Yeah.
So, we talked a lot in our previous episodes, Hotel California, Rumors. I mean, they sold by the, you know,
Bucket
pallet
load.
load.
Yeah. Bucket.
Yeah. And, it's like we joke, you hit puberty, here, have Hotel California, have Rumors. It's just what happened in the late 70s.
Yeah. Or 19.
Everyone had it.
Yeah.
Um, and so definitely the sales of an album speaks to how many people think this thing is amazing. Now, everyone could be wrong, doubtful, but it's definitely something that you have to sort of take into the equation. Um, just because Michael Jackson's Thriller sold more than Toto 4, does that make Thriller more of a masterpiece than Toto 4?
Hell no. Go on.
1982 is its whole other episode about that.
Yes. 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 Okay.
Lastly,
Okay.
lastly, when considering the masterpieces I put in my musical museum as the curator of my own museum of masterpieces, personal connection has to be a thing there. Just like when looking at a piece of art, it either hits you or it doesn't. Um, Van Gogh's Starry Night, David's statue, sorry, Michelangelo's statue of David.
Mhm.
Um, you know, the photo Piss Christ, that's an extreme, but there are people out there who would say, oh my gosh, that's the most magnificent piece of self-expression there is. And others would just say, dude, what are you doing?
Mhm.
It's the same with, Duchamp writing, something like, this is art on a urinal and posting it in a gallery.
Mhm.
You know, is it really? So personal connection to the piece comes into it as well. Here, we'll just take Dire Straits, for example. A lot of people would say Dire Straits' masterpiece is Brothers in Arms. It sold a gajillion copies. It made an impact on the direction of digital recording for the entire industry. It was pretty dang unique at the time. Nothing else had that Knopfler sound. It sold a gajillion, but for me, the personal connection to it is really, really small. The album that preceded that, Love Over Gold, um, had probably very little impact other than just production quality. Again, nothing else sounded like it. didn't sell for much, but I have a deeply personal connection to that record because of the soundscapes that it evoked, the beauty of the songwriting, the passion in Knopfler's playing. There's all those things like that that would lead me to consider more readily putting Love Over Gold on the wall of masterpieces than, say, Brothers in Arms.
I
Um,
would agree. I
so
would agree.
so there's a lot of different factors at play there, but for me, those are the five different things that I was kind of thinking about as we were considering, um, you know, Sergeant Pepper, Asia, Hotel California, Rumors, and A Night at the Opera. I suppose that for any of those five, hmm, well, let me back that up a minute. So, like, personal connection for me was not a big one for A Night at the Opera. So I would
I
not put
heard.
that. Yeah. Uh, that was
You're never
it.
gonna
It
live
it,
that
it
one
pains
down.
me. It pains me that we are feel so differently about that record, Armando. But you
I
know,
can tell.
there's Black Midi to
Ah!
boot.
Yeah.
So so
All hail Black
however,
Midi. Go on.
yeah, it is nothing is Black Midi,
No, I
baby.
know.
Um, but however, maybe Sex Pistols, never mind the Bullocks, here's the Sex Pistols. Now, I might consider that a masterpiece just because of the impact and uniqueness of it, that's so overwhelming that those slices, within the circle, within the pie, are so enormous that it just eclipses everything else. Um, Personally, I still wouldn't put Sex Pistols in there, but if there were an album that had that much impact and that much uniqueness that I didn't personally care for, it might have to go up in, the world of masterpieces for me. Maybe Ornette Coleman's Free Jazz might go up in there. Um, hard to say. This is a very difficult topic to be able to kind of take and apply ad nauseum across the board. But, for me, these are the five things that for now I kind of stick to. And I think it's a pretty good set of tools to work with to measure and examine and determine whether something is a masterpiece for me.
Okay. All right.
And Ken, if you say what Jim said, I'm gonna hit you
Hard.
I hear you.
hard.
I hear you. I think a lot of when we talk about masterpieces, my brain works in two different ways. Um, One way that is absolutely as objective as possible, and then the other way is the personal, how it resonates or doesn't resonate with me. Part of this is because I've had so much formal education that includes classical music, operatic music, symphonic music, all of those things. Um, and so there are composers, for instance, um, uh, I consider Beethoven an absolute master. And take, for instance, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony is an absolute masterpiece. There are many people that would agree with me in that. I've actually been on stage and performed, in the fourth movement of that symphony. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was an incredible experience. When was the last time I listened to it? 35, 40 years. You know, it's not something that I put on and listen to for enjoyment. However, Maurice Duraflay's Requiem, I can listen to that all day, every day, almost. That does resonate with me sonically and in every way. Um, there's probably a ton of people that not only would they not consider that a masterpiece, they probably don't even know it exists because it's just not one of the most popular um, pieces of classical music out there. And let's face it, there's a lot of it out there. So part of those two different parts of my brain um, uh, can't help but look at it in both ways simultaneously. As a matter of fact, when I was working on my bachelor's degree, um, I was considered an oddball because while we were studying for a music theory exam, I was listening to Tears for Fears songs from the big chair on my Walkman. It's like, what is that you're listening to? And it was before it got popular. So I let a couple of them, put the headphones on. They're just kind of like, what's this? And, you know, I mean, Jim's mention of that specific Talk Talk album, I, I've seen on X a lot of people talk about it. I've seen nobody talk about Talk Talk's first album, but I absolutely adore it. Now, it was completely different from the rest of their album, but The Party's Over is just is brilliant to me. Um, The Fix, Shuttered Room is an absolute, it's a perfect album. But so to me, those are masterpieces. But looking at it objectively, because it doesn't match the criteria of impact as far as the industry. It doesn't meet the criteria for sales, which I associate with how it resonates with the public as a whole. Obviously, those two albums made enough impact that they were allowed to make another album. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't know how the sales are for talking about Talk Talk. I don't know how the sales are from that first to second to third album go because starting after that first album, they took a hard turn, as far as what they were doing sonically and musically in every single way.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, that's just the way my brain works. I look at it overall, as far as, like I say, the impact, the sales, da 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 da, even quality of the recording, um, the musicianship and whatever. So there are albums that I consider to be absolute masterpieces that would not go in my gallery, but that's just because of the way that it resonates with me. Does that answer any kind of question? Probably not. Um, I don't
Can you give
think
an
there
example of
of of
that last part?
of
Yeah,
what is
please
a
do.
masterpiece that I wouldn't put
Yeah.
in my
Yes. Yes.
gallery. La 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 la. Well, those two that I mentioned. Well, no. Masterpiece I wouldn't put in my gallery. Uh, oh gosh. God, where would I start? Well, a
Begin
Start
with
anywhere, my friend.
Madonna's first album, for example. I got all kinds of respect for that album. I knew somebody back in college when it was another guy in my dorm that just absolutely he just played it constantly, and his room was right next to mine, so I heard it as often as he did. Um, I think it's a phenomenal album, but I I couldn't care less personally. So, you know, and that has nothing to do with whether something is overplayed or not. And that always for personally, that always, creeps into my analysis too. Am I just plain tired of it? Um,
So for something to be in your gallery, does it have to tick the box of both objective, it's objectively a masterpiece, and then it's also personally a masterpiece, or can it go either way?
well, okay. Well, clarify what the objective boxes
Well,
are.
so the reason I asked the question was that you talked about the first Madonna album,
Yeah,
and you were saying like objectively, it's kind of a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece of pop dance music.
yeah,
And but yet, even though it's a masterpiece of that, you wouldn't put it in your gallery. So that would lead me to ask, okay, or lead me to assume that the personal qualification of whether something is a masterpiece has as much weight, or it's a significant part of the equation to see if you would hang it in your gallery. That's
right.
what led me to the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the influence that it had at the time was very significant because she had hits right off the bat. Part of that was the album itself. Part of that was the MTV generation at the time. And of course, her huge influence, coming out of her songs being played in the nightclubs too, as the pop dance music. But so I can recognize it as in that way as a masterpiece, but the box as far as resonating with me doesn't get checked. There is a tad nostalgic aspect of it because of it was during the college years, and that good
Sure.
friend of mine next, in the room next to me in the door, so it has that aspect. But and I have a digital copy of the album, but I don't know that I've ever listened to it. So I would probably be more interested in hearing the album tracks off of that album than just the album as a whole, just to kind of get a flavor for it. Um, was that produced was was that produced by Giorgio Moroder?
No, it was produced by Reggie Lucas. It was produced by John Jellybean Benitez,
Okay, couldn't
various
remember.
producers.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know a lot of Donna Summer was with Moroder.
Giorgio
Um,
Yep.
Moroder.
and so yeah, I think with those producers and the vision for that album was amazing, and it was something enough different than what was on popular radio at the time to make an impression overall. And we know that radio stations are all about listens and ratings and um, pandering to the popular audience.
Pandering, you say?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
Okay.
don't mean a little black and white bear. Yeah,
understand.
that would be panding.
Oh my God. Okay.
Watch yourself. Well, I think the other factor to include in there, which is kind of unescapable, is I'll say the visual impact of Madonna. I mean, she she was a good looking young lady, and that was marketed up the wazoo.
Sure.
Certainly in Like a Virgin, it got even more explosive once she decided to portray Marilyn Monroe on the MTV Music Awards. But
Yeah.
yeah, the whole, I don't know if it's an incestuous relationship between MTV and radio during that time, probably certainly did a lot to sort of goose the impact.
Well, the interesting thing about Madonna is, and it's something that has been um, uh, also accomplished by one of Armando's favorite artists, in that Madonna appeals so strongly to young girls. In other words, that appeal wasn't necessarily to the male adolescents, because style wise and dress wise, um,
I get what you're saying.
her yeah, the girls were just absolutely gaga.
Yep.
Who's another artist that more current.
Well, I wasn't thinking so much the young male youths as I was like the freshman male college students, of which I was one when, Madonna really began to hit with the first record.
Oh,
That
okay.
that got a lot of notice and a lot of attention, and so it
Hmm.
sort of helped to become part of the zeitgeist
Okay.
of, popular culture at the time.
Yeah. I wasn't part of that zeitgeist, so yeah, I didn't think about that.
You
I
you count your blessings, young man.
However, I did like the video for Papa Don't Preach. Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Well, just to qualify what with or carry on what you said, Ken. I really, when Madonna hit in 83 or 82 with the first album, I have it on vinyl, big surprise. But really, the only song that hit me or that I liked was Holiday, side two, track one. I really wasn't a fan of Lucky Star. I really wasn't a fan of Borderline. Burning Up was okay as a minor hit. Um, 8 songs on the album. It really didn't. I mean, I liked it at the time, but you know, I wasn't part of what was. It really didn't register with me at the time in terms of a popular album. Um,
Mhm.
but very interesting opinions, guys, as to what would make a masterpiece. Um,
The the floor is now yours.
for me, um, uh, when anybody has ever asked me, what kind of music do you listen to? I've always said A to Z, ABBA to Zeppelin. My musical tastes go all over the map, with the exception of rap or hip hop. I will say that. But for me, as long as something was melodic, uh, in the case of the Beatles, intricately arranged, with use of symphony and strings, anything that would catch my ear, I would listen to. There were no borders. There was no restrictions on me. Whether it was an ABBA album or whether it was a Queen album, or ELO or Zeppelin, I listened to whatever I wanted to listen to. Uh,
Mhm.
for me, seeing as how you both lovingly refer to A Night at the Opera as a masterpiece, I'm kidding, of course. But what struck me about Queen as as an 11-year-old, um, their musicality, their diversity, their the arrangements of the songs, the use of harmony and the vocal delivery, the tight harmonies that were done, just
Very.
the overall structure of the music. Um, that's what drew me into Queen, and I've never looked back. But that's what also drew me into the Beatles, like Sergeant Pepper and Abbey Road, and I never looked back. So for me, what makes a masterpiece? It's like I said in the previous episodes, it has to do with the music. Does the music grab you or grab me? Um, you know, the arrangement of the music, is it interesting enough to pull me in? to listen to want to listen to more. It's like I said to Jim before in the previous episode, um, the enticement of the next song coming up. You know,
Yeah, you called it the anticipation factor.
yeah, the anticipation factor, the pulling in, the fact that it pulls you in to want to hear more of what's coming up next. Um, the remembrance of where you were when you first heard a certain album or a certain song. Like for example, Bohemian Rhapsody. I was sitting in our kitchen in Toronto. I was sitting on my sister's lap, and the video came on American Bandstand. Okay. And there you have the video of the four of them with the head and shoulder shot with, and the whole performance video. And that's what pulled me in to it. Um, there are all these variables that come in, like I've said before. Um, the emotions that it brings up in you, or reminds you of when you hear
Hmm.
a certain album or a piece of music, whether it's symphonic, whether it's rock, whether it's disco. Yes, I love a good Donna Summer album. You give me a copy of a Love Trilogy from 1976, and I mean the original Oasis Records release from Giorgio Moroder. Boom, I'm there. You know what I mean? I will sit there and listen to it. All 17 minutes of Try Me, I Know We Can Make It, all up side one. I will listen to it. I will flip over side two and listen to all of that. My point is, for me, what makes a masterpiece, there's not one thing. It's
Right.
Right.
all these variables tied up together that to me make a masterpiece. And I don't care if it's Overnight Sensation. I don't care if it's Voulez-Vous. I don't care if it's A Night at the Opera. I don't care if it's Sergeant Pepper. They all hold certain memories and certain characteristics that to me make them masterpieces.
Mm-hmm.
And in essence, for me, it's I know when I know when I hear it. That's what to me makes a masterpiece.
Okay, so can an album be a masterpiece that's not in your wheelhouse?
Hmm. Interesting question.
Which is basically what Jim asked me,
Yeah,
except in phrasing.
yeah. I'm trying to.
Yeah,
For
it's
me,
tough.
I don't think so because I have to connect with it on some level. There has to be something that draws me in to want to hear it over
Yeah.
and over again and to get
Yeah.
into it.
Well, in your example that you gave for Bohemian Rhapsody is exactly what happened to me, sitting at the table in my mom's kitchen with the radio in an open window, and the first time I heard the Police do Roxanne. That's a very clear memory for someone that is becoming more forgetful as I get older. It just, it's like, whoa, if I could have
Yeah.
rewound the radio and listened to it again, I would have. So yeah. Oh yeah.
I
Those
mean,
are magic moments.
okay. I just thought of something of an album or, that I would consider to be a masterpiece that would not probably be in my wheelhouse. Blood on the Tracks.
Okay.
Okay.
I've listened to it. I like what I hear. I'm thinking that this is an album that I could listen to more and get into more. That's an album that could possibly pull me in, but that is not readily in my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Right.
There's an answer to your question there, Ken.
Yeah, no, that's good. Oh, okay. I have another question for both of you.
I'm a size 32. Go on.
Can
If
an
you believe
album be a
that.
masterpiece, um, but not be a 10 out of 10 album?
You see,
We've done videos of perfect albums, and then we did videos of Close But No Cigar. So could a Close But No Cigar album be a masterpiece?
Mm.
Mm,
I'm grappling with that because again, for me, it has to connect with me on some level.
yeah.
I'm I'm erring towards yes, that an album
You have
could
to
be a
be different, don't
masterpiece.
you?
Yeah, kind of do. It's that iconoclast in me.
Well, and there's a
No, damn it.
difference.
Go
Well, and there's a
on.
difference between being just one song away from being a perfect album or being three songs that you don't really care about. I mean, if can five out of an album with 10 songs and
Okay.
five are just absolutely mind blowing and the other five are just meh,
No,
Well,
would
see,
that over?
Blood on the Tracks is a perfect example of that. It's a 10
Yeah,
song
there
album,
it is.
and we talked about it the other day. And yeah, to me, there's five of the songs that are just undeniable masterpieces, and the other five are just good.
Yeah.
Now, I haven't. I would have to say that one of the other qualifications, kind of an inherent qualification, is time spent, familiarity with it, to be able to kind of provide that judgment, if you will, if something is a masterpiece. I haven't spent enough time with Blood on the Tracks to make that kind of judgment. However, I would be willing to spend some more time because there's something about the quality of it that does draw me
pull you
back
in.
into it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
I'm the
think,
same way.
Armando, you were right on the nose when you were talking about something about an album needing to sort of draw you in, to make you want to anticipate the next track, to make you want to go ahead, and listen to it. Um,
You know
uh,
what I call it? Sorry, I call it sonic orgasm.
well, tune in next time, ladies and gentlemen, for another.
What I mean by
No,
that is when you hear an album and you, and we're not going down the blue road, folks, just one second here. When I say sonic orgasm, I mean that when you hear us, when you start to listen to an album and you're going through the album and each song is like the aha moment. That to me, that's the sonic orgasm. It's like, this is good, this is good, this is good, this is freaking good, this is effing good. Man, I love this album. Like what you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's like a build up, you know? And where where you get to the point where you don't want to skip any tracks on an album. To me, that's a sonic orgasm.
yeah,
Because you
I mean,
revel in the fact that you're listening to those songs. You revel in the moment. You don't want that side to end. Or the only thing that's better is flipping over the second side and the second side being just as good, if not better than the first.
yeah, the only thing that could be better than the first side is flipping over the second side and finding Horizons and Supper's Ready. And
Okay,
maybe that's
so
an example of, an album
or
where not all the tracks are, 10 out of 10, but yet again, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
or if if you're hearing Secret Story for the first time and you're oh, like, oh my God, you know,
Yeah,
and takes you away on a journey that you never thought was possible.
sure.
There's the sonic orgasm right then and there. And ladies and gentlemen, we are getting off the sonic orgasm train right now. We are moving back into our regular schedule program. There we go. I mean, I'm
I
yeah,
got $2 that says we'll return to it. I got $2 on the table.
maybe not on
come
this
and
issue.
collect, okay? You know, but that's the only way I can describe it is that if an album, again, for me, like I said before, has to pull me in.
Mhm.
There has to be that wow factor. And unfortunately for me, the albums that have been coming out lately, with the exception of the Tea Party, don't have that wow factor for me. You know, I like albums that take chances. And I'm sorry, doing a rehashing of this as I reach over, pardon me, folks, but doing a rehashing of this is not a sonic orgasm. It's erectile dysfunction. I'm sorry. I can't do it.
And the $2 are mine.
Yeah.
Send it to.
Okay, once you have decided whether an album um is or is not a masterpiece,
Oh, yeah.
does that ever change?
Once you've
Sure,
decided,
sure,
yeah, it can change. I mean, you can hear an album that you think is, a masterpiece, or you think is, yeah, we'll use that term, masterpiece. You listen to it, say, 2 years later, and nah, it doesn't hold the same bite anymore that it used to.
sure. I was just thinking right now about two records that are kind of on the fence for me. As it turns out, both are 80s records, and both have songs on them that are like 11 out of 10. But they also have songs on them that are like, in the bounce around 7 and 8. I'm thinking specifically about the debut album from the Blue Nile, "A Walk Across the Rooftops," and the debut album from Danny Wilson, "Meet Danny Wilson." Two, the common elements between those albums are at, the leads hail from Scotland, and it's music. But as far as like where both of them go, it's, one, "A Walk Across the Rooftops" feels like, you know, Frank Sinatra meets orchestral maneuvers in the dark on the rainy streets of Glasgow.
Ooh,
And and Meet Danny Wilson sounds like the missing stepchild of Becker and Fagan. I mean, they're both astounding albums, and I love them dearly. And there's a piece of me that wants to call both of them masterpieces because of that, the personal connection and the anticipation factor, the quality, the uniqueness of them. Um, but I just don't know if they have that X factor that take it beyond something I love dearly to say I want to hang this in the wall of my museum
in other
because it's
words,
so beautiful.
in football terms, it's like being tackled on the 1 yard line. You're just
Perhaps
over
so close.
you're so close to getting a touchdown, but you get tackled in order to call an album a masterpiece. But there's just something that stops you, right? And
Yeah,
that's
but just because it's not a masterpiece and just because it's not a perfect album doesn't mean it's, you know, worth less
it doesn't
than
mean that
others.
it doesn't mean that it doesn't have musical validity in and of itself.
Right. In fact,
Well,
Armando, my assigned listening to you, sir, is "A Walk
oh,
Across the Rooftops" and "Meet Danny Wilson."
I knew you were going to do that. I knew you were going to
Well,
do that.
and I agree with the Meet Danny Wilson because the songs, the good songs are just absolutely phenomenally good. And the ones that are less than that are just like, eh. And that does keep it from being a perfect album for me. But I resolved that just by not listening to the mess songs off of it. You know,
Yeah, it's,
Okay. Okay.
and it's just and it's and for me something that's that extreme, the absolute heaven as opposed to the very common or even less than common is very frustrating, off of the same album.
yep.
And it's
I have,
something that their second album it's even more of the same,
Let
you
me
know.
ask you this question to both of you, because I think we've neared I think we've answered the question of what makes a masterpiece.
No, maybe I'm gonna poke that bear a little more, but go for it.
Have you ever, I know I have you ever loved an album so much that you are so excited about this album and you recommend it to friends, families, strangers in the street, a bum sitting on the park bench having a drink or whatever, that you want to share this album with so many people and they listen to it and they come back with, yeah, it's all right.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there
That happens a
Welcome
lot.
to the music den.
Yeah.
you're sitting there pulling out what's left of your hair, trying to convince them that this is like, and they're like, it's all right.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
I'm actually probably more that than the other in my personal experience. I've, like I said, high school, college, and since then, I've always been considered the amongst my personal peers, the guy that likes weird music. You guys are the exception to that, you know. So yeah, most of my life I've been the oddball, the outsider. Sure. Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, Jim.
I was just gonna say, it's like just the other day, um, I regularly meet with this group of guys, ages 70s to 17 as part of a church men's thing, like this unofficial gathering. And one of the kids there I know is, if he's not a music major, he will be in college. He's into vocals, he's into performance, and he plays like bass clarinet. I mean, so he's playing some obscure stuff. And he's wearing Sublime t-shirts to, our meetings. So I'm like, okay, vocal choral performance, bass clarinet, and Sublime. If this person doesn't know Matheny, he should.
Mhm.
And so I sent him a note and said, or actually, I caught him at the end of one of the sessions, and I said, "Hey, let me see your phone for a second. Where do you listen, to your music through?" And it was Spotify, and I dialed up, Minuano 68, and I said, "Listen to this. Listen to it as loud as you can possibly stand,
John.
and let me know what you think." And um, so that just kind of speaks to the whole thing of, do you share music? This guy's reaction was, "Dude, Jim, this piece is amazing. I really like it. Thank you for recommending it. I'll give it another listen for details and tell you more about what I'm hearing and my thoughts." So to me, this feels like a complete win, to be able to, kind of recommend, to kind of read the room, as it were, and make a recommendation that
Yeah,
hits.
yeah.
And that's the stuff that just makes me do a little happy dance in my head and in my room.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I get it. No, because for me, like Ken was saying about, being the odd one out, for me, I've said before, music was always on in the house. Growing up with three older sisters, it was always on. So you tell me what 6-year-old knows, again, the Donna Summer reference, knows a love trilogy, right?
yeah,
You tell me that. What kid knows Bohemian Rhapsody at 5? Very few that I know of,
yeah. And
right?
that has its, I'll call it a generational Overton window. Because for
Exactly.
me, it's like, what 5-year-old knew A Taste of Honey in 1970?
Yeah.
And Ken, you probably have your own examples from,
Sure.
back in the Stone Ages, from when you were a wee tot.
Sure. When
Okay.
records were made out of rocks. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
yeah. No, it's just,
Flintstones, you got to take the bird and
yeah,
put his
yeah,
beak down on the stone.
yeah. I hate this piece of music and they still play it. Okay. Um, those talking needles on the Flintstones.
Yeah.
But no,
Yeah.
I mean, look, what makes a masterpiece? Personally, for me, I don't really think that there's an answer because it means different. It has a different meaning to everybody. You know what I mean? There's not one concise answer as to what makes a masterpiece. Because what
Well,
makes them,
certainly amongst the three of us, as I listened to, myself and you guys, the one common thread between all of us was that there was some kind of personal connection. Armando, you spoke about, where you were when you first heard it and the emotions that it brought up. Ken, you were speaking of, there's certainly an objective portion of Masterpiece. Then you referenced Beethoven's Ninth, and then the personal part, and you talked about Duraflay's version of the Requiem, and how much that meant to you. And for me, I had personal connection as one of my like five pieces of the pie. So certainly that's the common element amongst the three of us. But it feels like there's other pieces in there that we also have in common, but we just haven't teased it out. And maybe that's a topic for another time or not.
yeah, I think for me, the common denominator of this episode in terms of what makes a masterpiece is individuality
Sure.
because it means different things to different people.
Sure. And Ken's museum is going to look different from Armando's. It's going to look different from mine.
Yeah.
That's exactly
And we've
it.
got five albums that we just talked about, over the course of February that really kind of illustrate that point.
That's exactly it. You know. So,
Yep.
any other thoughts? Or
The thing is to keep listening.
yeah.
Um, for instance, whereas A Night at the Opera is not my favorite album, I'm glad our discussions caused me to listen to it again.
Hmm.
There have been a lot of artists and albums that I didn't care for when I was younger that I love now,
Hmm.
that I did not appreciate
Hmm.
until the later years. Um, for most of my life, Jimi Hendrix was, Purple Haze. It was the singles I heard on the radio, and it didn't prompt me to listen to anything else until 20 years ago when they remastered in high quality the original three albums. And for whatever reason, I got on Amazon and I ordered all three of them as soon as they were reissued and started listening to them all the way through. And it's holy cow. You know, um, I'm a huge Hendrix fan now, whereas I never was before. The other, the hits were just kind of eh. But then I always tend to lean towards the album tracks
Yeah.
than the hits in the top 40s anyway.
Yeah. I'm the same.
The thing is to listen, and whether it be this series that we're wrapping up, or especially something like Hidden Treasures, give it a shot. I mean, whether you're curious because it's like, oh, I usually like what Jim likes, I'm going to give this a listen, or whether it's, God, that sounds like garbage. Can it really be that bad? And then just
Black
listen
Midi.
to it anyway. I mean, after all,
I heard that.
Armando, you absolutely adore Secret Story. I do too, but then Jim doesn't like it. So what? You know.
Yeah.
Not that I don't like it. I just don't like it as much.
Say goodnight, Gracie. All right. Well, again,
Yeah.
it all comes back to the definition of a masterpiece really, for me, does come down to individuality. There's no right or wrong answer. It's all
It's
a
a
matter
it's a
of,
more of a personal thing for you.
yeah, it's a personal thing.
Mhm.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Our Coda edition for this series, What is a Masterpiece? Um, Please put down in the comments below what your opinions are on what does
Please.
constitute a masterpiece. Again, no right or wrong answers, just opinion. Um, I want to thank Jim and Ken for coming along with me on this extended musical journey over these episodes. And yeah, maybe you've discovered an album that you might want to listen to and give it a shot. You never know. You never know, right? Again, there are no right or wrong answers. And I've always said, yes.
I just want to make sure that I get in there and get it on film, as it were, to say thank you, Armando, for allowing Ken and I to shoehorn our way into this topic. Because
Right,
just to be fair and to be
right.
transparent, when I saw that, Armando had YouTube thumbnails episodes posted for, is this a masterpiece, Sergeant Pepper, and is this a masterpiece, Asia? I said, whoa, hold the phone. What are you doing recording episodes like that without me
Without us,
and
yeah.
without Ken? Come on, man. And Armando, you were kind enough to
Yes.
re-record three of the episodes and to do three more along with us. So, sir, you're a scholar
Thank
and a
you.
gentleman. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. I always enjoy doing shows with you guys. Um, it was a fun exercise, and we can revisit this again. This doesn't have to end here. We can take a bit of a break and we come back with another list of albums, and maybe you guys can give me an album to listen to, and vice versa. And we
Dude,
can
I gave you 10 albums to listen to.
then,
Literally.
for the purpose of this series,
Oh, I see.
we can come back and do it again. So,
Yeah.
It sounds good.
you know, but again, what I was trying to say is that I've said this before. Once you think you know all there is to know about music, you might as well just pack it in and say,
Yep.
okay, I'm done. I've hit the limit. I've hit the summit. I can do no more. There's always something new to learn. Always,
Yes.
and that Black Mindy's crap. Okay, but that's another issue. Um, hey, I had to get that in. So, all right, ladies and
You've gotten
gentlemen,
that in twice, at least in this episode, young man.
it's because it's my channel. All right, now
Cut.
cut. All right, ladies and gentlemen,
Wrap.
thank you again for tuning in. And I want to thank my two co-hosts and cohorts for, again, entertaining me with their insights as to what
Thank
does
you.
make a masterpiece. And we will see you soon, very soon, with more episodes. All right. Please click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to keep yourselves on top of any new content I've got coming up. I've got more shows coming up with Bill Schuster. We were doing Jim, and I also do believe that Ken is also joining in on this. We're doing a young person's guide to talking heads that's coming up. Jim and I are going to be doing, and possibly Ken, if you're in on this too, we're going to be talking about musician Bella Fleck and his three albums that he did with Chick Corea. I started listening to them today. Fantastic stuff. Amazon, here I come. Anyways, please, let us know what you think of these episodes. And it's been a hell of a time doing these shows. I've enjoyed it. It's been tedious, it's been hard, but it's been rewarding at the same time. So, yeah, we will see you soon with more shows. Please look after yourselves and one another and have a good night. Bye for now.